All right, we got a fun and interesting read today, picking up April 13th. Is that right?
April 13th.
That's right.
Let me go find it. And seems like 13 is not a lucky number. Certainly not lucky today for Joab. Let me dive in. In all Israel, there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. Good-looking dude. On the top of his head, I love this. Look at this. This guy had a good head of hair. On the top of his head to the sole of his foot, there was no blemish in him. Whenever he cut the hair of his head, and he used to cut his hair once a year because it became too heavy for him, he would weigh it, and its weight was 200 shekels. Basically, now that we're all on quarantine, that's going to be happening a lot more, I think. We should all be weighing our hair. But it weighed 200 shekels by the royal standard. 3 sons and a daughter were born to Absalom. His daughter's name was Tamar, and she became a beautiful woman. Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king. But Joab, refused to come to him. So he sent a second time, and he refused to come. Then he said to his servants, "Look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley there. Go set it on fire." So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab said to Absalom's house, Joab did go up to Absalom's house. He said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Absalom said to Joab, "Look, I sent word to you and said, 'Come here so I can send you to the king and ask, why have I come from Gersha would it be better for me if I were still there? Now then, I want to see the king's face. And if I'm guilty of anything, let him put me to death." So Joab went to the king and told him this. The king summoned Absalom, and he came and he bowed down with his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom.
In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" He would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there is no representative of the king to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land. Then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they receive justice." Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. While your servant was living at Geshur in Aram, I made this vow. If the Lord takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord in Hebron." The king said to him, "Go in peace." So he went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel to say, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpets, then say, 'Absalom is king of Hebron.'" 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom. They had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter. While Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, to come from Gilo, his hometown. And so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. A messenger came and told David, "The hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom." Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword." The king's officials answered him, "Your servants are ready to do whatever our lord the king chooses." The king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. So the king set out with all the people following him, and they halted at the edge of the city. All his men marched past him, along with all the Kerethites and Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had accompanied him from Gath marched before the king. The king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why should you come along with us? Go back and stay with King Absalom. You are a foreigner, an exile from your homeland. You came only yesterday, and today shall I make you wander about with us when I do not know where I am going? Go back and take your people with you. May the Lord show you kindness and faithfulness." But Ittai replied to the king, "As surely as the king lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king may be, whether it means life or death, there your servant will be." David said to Ittai, "Go ahead, march on." So Ittai the Gittite marched on with all his men and the families that were with him.
The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on towards the wilderness. Zodak was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant. They set down the Ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Then King said to Zodak, "Take the Ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the Lord's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see it in his dwelling place again. But if he says, 'I am not pleased with you,' then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him." The king also said to Zodak the priest, "Do you understand? Go back to the city with my blessing. Take your son Imahaz with you, and also Abiathar's son Jonathan. You and Abiathar return with your 2 sons. I will wait at the fords in the wilderness until the word comes from you to inform me." So Zodak and Abiathar took the Ark of God back to Jerusalem and stayed there. But David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered, and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads too, and were weeping as they went up. Now David had been told, I'll get this, Ahithophel is among the conspirators of Absalom. So David prayed, "Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness." And then David arrived at the summit where people used to worship God. Hushai, the Archite, was there to meet him, his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'Your Majesty, I will be your servant. I was your father's servant in the past, but now I will be your servant,' then you can help me by frustrating Ahithophel. Yes,
Ahithophel.
Ahithophel's advice. Won't the priest Zodak and Abiathar be there with you? Tell them anything you hear in the king's palace. There are 2 sons, Ahimaaz, son of Zodak, and Jonathan, son of Abiathar, are there with me. Send them to me with anything you hear." So Hushai, David's confidant, arrived at Jerusalem as Absalom was entering the city. When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the steward of Mephibosheth, wanted and waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled and loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisins, 100 cakes of figs, and a skin of wine. The king asked Ziba, "Why have you brought these?" Ziba answered, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and fruit are for the men to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the wilderness." The king then asked, "Where is your master's grandson?" Ziba said to him, "He is staying in Jerusalem because he thinks today the Israelites will restore to me my grandfather's kingdom." Then the king said to Ziba, "All that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours." I humbly bow," Ziba said. "May I find favor in your eyes, my lord the king." As King David approached Bahurim, a man from the same clan of Saul's family came out from there. His name was Shimei, son of Ger, and he cursed as he came out. He pelted David and all the king's officials with stones, though all the troops and the special guards were on David's right and left. As he cursed, Shimei said, get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given the kingdom into the hands of your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you are a murderer.
Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, that's a good start, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head. But the king said, what does this have to do with you, your sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursed because the Lord said to him, curse David, who can ask, why do you do this? David then said to Abishai and all his officials, my son, my own flesh and blood is trying to kill me. How much more than this Benjamite? Leave him alone, let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore to me his covenant blessing instead of his curse today. So David and his men continued along the road while Shimei was going along the hillside opposite him, cursing as he went and throwing stones at him and showering him with dirt. The king and all the people with him arrived at their destination exhausted, and there he refreshed himself. The Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people.
Thus is our reading for the day. You know, it's a lot of different components to today's study, that's for sure. We have several directions we could take this. Be very interested to hear what some of you are wondering or thinking about in the chat. So make sure that you share that, but then also as you have questions, there's a Q&A tab. I'll remind you if you have specific questions that we could maybe wrestle with or wrestle with you with. But then also just as we're getting started, gang, what do you think about, and yeah, there's a hugely beautiful sunrise out there, just as a little side note. But how do ambitious people, or how does ambition sometimes step in to manipulate other people to create an advantage for themselves? What does that look like? And when you think about that question, have you seen that, or how does that flesh out for you?
Joy made an interesting observation how sometimes, oh, I lost it now, certain details might get left out that could be an advantage to whoever the person is that's trying to take advantage.
Yeah.
So they may tell a partial truth. They may tell a part of the story, but not the whole thing.
Yeah. Part of the story. I love that. We do that all over the place. I mean, that happens, I think, for a lot of families. That's kind of the way that they operate, or particularly with employees to bosses, or bosses to employees. And you know, at the Journey North, we have a phrase sometimes. Linfield and I, or Josh and I, or someone else will talk about. You know, we can't just do the 90% of the truth. We have to, you know, the other 10% is always the hard part. It's like sometimes easier to walk in and share a little bit of truth, harder to walk in and share all of the truth that needs to be shared for conflict to get resolved, or for opportunities to be moved towards. And what's that 10% that we sometimes hold back?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Absalom, he was an ambitious man, and he was kind of full of himself too. I mean, you could tell that because he wanted to weigh his own hair, and so Yeah, but him, standing at the gate before the people came in to see his father. I mean, that was taking advantage of that opportunity and manipulating and kind of showing that, oh, my father's too busy for you. I will be the one,
Yeah.
which wasn't the truthful. And, and kissing them, hugging them, shows that, oh, he's all about the people. Just a huge manipulation going on with Absalom. And, it's amazing on how people can become a little bit of manipulator when they desire something so greatly, and they'll go at all into they'll do anything to get that desire, and even to try to bend the truth just a little bit, or not tell the whole truth just a little bit, so they can get their advantage. It's a sad deal. And I'm trying to think, have I done that before?
When I first moved up here, my mom's father, before he died, he used to tell me, he had a phrase, and I didn't know, if he was telling it to me to be helpful, or if he actually had some insight into something. But he used to say, Mark, be careful of the one who meets you at the stagecoach. They're the ones that'll shoot you in the back. And I always would chuckle and laugh, and yeah, that's funny, Grandpa. He'd say, "Be careful, the ones that meet you at the stagecoach, they'll shoot you in the back." And there is something about those. Sometimes the ones that kind of are rushing to the city gate to give you hugs may not have your best intention, might have something else in mind, and it sure seems like that's the case here. But Kathy made an observation. It looks like David maybe neglected his kingly duties at the gate. And, there is something too about being mindful and attentive to people when they're on their way in or on their way out, or caring for people in the midst of things, and the attentiveness that leaders need to pay. Now you can't be everywhere at once. And Absalom certainly had a malicious intent on his choosing to be leader, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Both Kathy and Tanya made a little comment, and I was thinking about that as we read it too, that did David neglect, did he miss something there? Was he not paying attention, and Absalom took advantage of it?
Yeah, we don't know the full story there. We could have, Kathy's right that in biblical times the business was done at the gates, and Absalom, being the king of the sun, could have dismissed David's representative, and the scripture does not say that, but that representative should have, if he was dismissed, would have definitely reported back to David what was happening, or to one of them, Joab or somebody. Yeah.
How is it possible to reconcile a strong personal ambition with devotion to God?
I think part of it has to do with giving God credit, and I think He's given everyone talents and abilities, and when there's a strong ambition to succeed at something, I think it's very possible to to glorify God in the work that we do, in the things that we do. Certainly, it can go haywire. I think of athletes in particular. I remember years and years ago, when I was in college, I was part of a Fellowship of Christian Athletes huddle at the college that I went to, and the one of the debates, if you will, or the areas that we had discussion on, had to do with, well, how can you be competitive? How can someone who loves God go out onto a football field and pummel this other person? How can you possibly be, showing love? How do those two things, exist side by side. And I know Linfield was a football player, and he could address this too. But one of the things that I appreciate is not the guys who, when they, they'll score a touchdown and they'll point to the sky and things like that. The guys that I appreciate are the ones who, after the game, and you'll see this if, when they finish up, many times there are players from two teams who will gather in the center of the football field, and they'll kneel down, and you know exactly what they're doing. And it's such a great testimony to me anyway, to watch these guys, because in somewhat of a public manner, but in a very private way, I think they're praising God and thanking him for whatever happened. And so I think there is a way to do that, provided that we make sure that we, are we doing it for God, or who are we doing it for?
In the spirit of that idea of athleticism and a comment that Bob Poole made is to ask God to protect your integrity. It brought me to in my mind to a movie that came out, Todd, when you were probably in college, no, high school, maybe elementary school.
Careful now. Easy.
But I run because when I run, I feel his pleasure. What film? Who can name it?
Chariots of Fire.
It was Chariots of Fire.
Yeah. There is something about when our ambition is about God's glory, our ambition is rarely going to be out of sync. When it's about our glory, it has all kinds of opportunity to go sideways, as some of the people in the panel, Ginny and others, have kind of indicated. There's rarely a time where my seeking my glory is going to serve me well. But if what I'm doing is as a result of my attempt to bring God glory, show him honor, use what I have to bring, his son Jesus fame, it's rarely wrong. And yet there is times when the pragmatists among us kind of can somehow twist that to seemingly mean that the ends justify the means. Kind of Absalom burning Joab's field down. As long as what I get is right in my mind, as long as it works out in the way I intended to, then it was right for me to pursue that end. Mm-hmm. What character traits did David exhibit through his reaction? Shimei.
Well, I think one of them was a character trait of being humble. Like, you know what? Let him throw with rocks and let him, swear at us and curse us. And, if that's what God has for us right now, okay, I'm going to go through it.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's just that heart of, I just, this is a sad moment. Poor, David he got himself into a lot of trouble, but he also had some very sad
things up big time, that's for sure.
Yeah. But he also had some very sad moments in his life through his family, through sons and rebellious, and this is one of them where he's probably just defeated. He's probably wondering, what kind of parent am I? So many parents, when children rebel, they're like, what did I do? And he's probably feeling that right now. And
one of the things that I've often wondered about David, I don't really say this out loud very much because I don't know. I would never preach this per se, but I wondered if sometimes, if his sin created a permissive parenting style for him. Like, how could I ever hold my kids accountable after what I've done? I see that in parents sometimes. It's like, I sowed my own oats, or I did drugs. How could I ever hold my kids to a standard that I myself was unwilling to live up to? And I wonder if some of the experience that he had, this is just me wondering. I mean, this is not a biblical idea for sure, but I've just wondered in my mind if part of the struggle David's had with his parenting isn't as an outflow of how does he wrestle internally with his own brokenness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, not a biblical idea, so you guys don't have to jump on board with that at all. But there was a thing that I thought about Linfield and I've experienced where I've been spoken to harshly, and I've had strong critics over the course of my life. And inside of the criticism, if I'm really, really honest, I've often found elements of truth that I've been able to wrestle through and deal with. But I was wondering if you'd be willing to share, because critics often are critical and mean-spirited, but they're not always. Sometimes criticism comes in a way that the wounds of a friend are better than, I can't remember now. I'm doing a Joe Biden. I don't recall how it all went. Probably not a funny joke. Sorry about that. I've only had a cup of coffee. Give me a little grace. But would you be willing to share kind of what you went through as far as hearing from others recently?
Yeah. So you meaning with my assessment?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I've been on kind of a journey this year of making myself better, a better man of God, a better husband, a better pastor, a better father. And I asked about 20 people to do an assessment, to talk about my blind spots. What is it in me that I don't see? Because I can see 60% of what I do and who I am, but the 40%, what is that I don't see? And so people did this assessment on me and did some questions about it. And in January, I had a coach, Dale Peterson, through the Eagle Brook Association, sit down with me and talk through the answers to this. And some of the answers were pretty hard to hear. And I was, it was a very humbling experience of saying, man, I do that. One of them was, and I'll just share this, that I put myself down a lot. And people don't appreciate that. And they said that that's not right. And another one is that I have a kind of a defense mechanism of saying jokes and kind of in a wrong place. And so I'm trying to manage those, not get rid of them, but because they're part of who I am, but I need to manage those well. And so that's what I went through, but it was hard to hear. It was hard to hear some of the things that people were saying about it, and it's on the outside of it, or the back half of it now. I've really appreciated that, because then I can set some disciplines that I've needed to set in place. And so, is that what you wanted me to share?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, one of the things in recovery that people that are in recovery know and experiences the value of doing a ruthless moral inventory of oneself, and how it's really hard to do a really significant moral inventory of who we are. And it's really bold and courageous to invite other people into the process of speaking into that. And I was really proud of you for going through that. But I recognize in all of our lives that if we choose not to, it's pride. And if we do that, that's the kind of humility that I think God honors and allows us to become the better version of ourselves and kind of overcome some of the dark sides of leadership that we would exhibit otherwise. But hey, I want to say a quick prayer today, and then I got one last thing I want to do for us as we close. But let me pray. God, I do ask that over our lives we would experience what you would have for us, and that oftentimes, like we see over and over in the text, and so many ways inside of this sacred word that people got in their own ways, and we don't want to be those people. We don't want to be the people that get in our own way. We don't want to be the people that get in your way. So, Father, help us to see what we need to do to modify or to change or to better ourselves to be able to be used by you. And then give us a heart, a real strong heart for what you would have for us. And then let us pursue that with passion. Let us set aside some of what we might otherwise pursue in order to really pursue what you would have for us, because we know we'll find great joy in that. We'll find healing in that. We'll find who we were really meant to be, and we'll run as though when we run, we experience your pleasure, and we want to experience your pleasure in us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Now, I had began, for those of you who maybe tiptoed into our time a little bit late, by just kind of reflecting on some of the churches that I visited on Easter via the internet, because the Internet of Things affords us that opportunity. But I also mentioned and shared that if you didn't catch our service online, I think it would be of high value to you. And I thought I would just end our time today by showing a quick segment of how our service began. So I loved this. I loved the effort, Josh, that you put into this. And I love the voice of your son, who stirred my heart greatly as he reads this verse.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you.
You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
You are here, turning lives around. I'll worship you, I'll worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are
Darkness, my God, that is who you are. don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working.
You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
That is who you are.
That is who you are.
That is who you are, yeah. That is who you are. That is who you are. Yes, you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland.
Yes, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
I was just going to say, I wanted to comment earlier when you were having Linfield share about what he's been doing. And Mark and I want you guys all to know, Mark's been talking to me quite a bit, just noticing God's provision in all the little details that connect. And I was making a comment and I was like, man, I'm not even surprised. I'm less and less surprised because God is working things together and he's showing it to us. But when I was listening to the words of that song just now, it's like we're trying to reach everybody from our homes and we want everyone to see our faces and we want to be together. But the words to that song is repeatedly saying, that is who you are. And to me, it's like that prayer that my dad's talking about of saying, God, I want to give you all the glory. You are the one doing this. And I think about how Pastor Linfield has gone and done this thing that he's talking about without telling anybody, behind the scenes, without trying to, with no need of attention, because he wants to lead people humbly and better. And that is just such a beautiful example of what this song really means. And brings me to tears. And I'm extremely proud of Pastor Linfield. And I just hope we're all encouraged by that.
Thanks.
Hey, gang. Wonderful to be with you. I miss all of you. We love you and we care a lot about you. Happy Easter. God bless you guys.
Love ya.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.